December marks the final window for planting crops that will feed gardens through winter and early spring. Many productive varieties remain dormant or overlooked, while gardeners assume the season has ended. Missing this narrow planting window often means waiting months for the next opportunity and losing significant harvests. Cold hardy crops planted now can survive freezing temperatures, establish strong root systems, and produce yields when fresh vegetables become scarce and expensive. Professional growers and experienced gardeners recognize December as a strategic month for specific plantings that others completely miss. The difference between a productive winter garden and empty beds often comes down to understanding which crops thrive when planted in December's unique conditions. Timing these plantings correctly determines whether gardens remain productive through the coldest months or sit completely dormant until spring arrives much later. Garlic stands as the single most important December planting for productive gardens. Cloves planted now develop extensive root systems during winter dormancy, allowing bulbs to size up properly when spring temperatures rise. The process involves separating bulbs into individual cloves, selecting the largest specimens, and planting them pointy end up at 4 to 6 inches, spacing in loose, well-draining soil. Depth matters significantly. Cloves should sit 2 inches below the surface with 3 inches of mulch covering them. This depth protects against frost heaving while maintaining proper moisture levels. Hardneck varieties generally outperform softneck types in cold climates, producing larger cloves and distinctive scapes in late spring. A single pound of seed garlic typically yields 8 to 10 pounds of mature bulbs by midsummer. The investment returns roughly 800% while requiring minimal care beyond occasional weeding. Garlic planted after December often produces small, undivided bulbs because insufficient cold exposure prevents proper bulb formation. December planting ensures adequate vernalization. Broad beans planted in December produce earlier and heavier yields than spring-sown crops. These legumes tolerate temperatures down to 15 degrees Celsius once established, making them remarkably cold-hardy. Seeds should be planted 2 inches deep and 4 inches apart in double rows, creating blocks rather than single lines for better pollination and support. The key advantage involves root development during cool months. Extensive nitrogen-fixing nodules form on roots during winter, enriching soil while feeding the plant. By March, December, planted broad beans stand 12 to 18 inches tall, while spring plantings barely germinate. This head start translates to harvests beginning in late April rather than June, extending the productive window significantly. Each plant produces approximately 1 pound of beans over its harvest period. A 10-foot double row yields roughly 25 pounds of fresh beans or 8 pounds dried. The protein content rivals meat at 26% by dry weight, making these among the most nutritionally dense crops available. Specific onion varieties bred for overwintering require December planting to achieve proper bulb size. Sets planted now establish roots during winter dormancy, then surge into growth when day length increases in late February. The critical factor involves choosing short-day or intermediate-day varieties. Long-day types planted in December often bolt without forming bulbs. Sets should be planted with just the tip showing above soil level, spaced 4 inches apart in rows 12 inches wide. Proper spacing prevents competition while allowing adequate air circulation to reduce disease pressure. Overwintering onions typically mature by late May or early June, roughly 6 weeks before spring-planted varieties. This timing fills the gap when stored onions from previous harvests run low, but new crops haven't matured. A 20-foot row of December-planted sets yields approximately 40 pounds of mature onions. The harvest timing also coincides with lower pest pressure since onion maggot flies haven't reached peak activity yet. Spinach planted in December germinates slowly but produces the most cold-hardy leaves of any salad green. Seeds should be sown ½ an inch deep in rows 6 inches apart, with seeds spaced 1 inch within rows. The plants remain small through winter, but don't die back like summer-planted crops, maintaining living leaves even under snow cover. As soon as temperatures rise above 40 degrees Rev in late winter, growth accelerates dramatically. December planted spinach reaches harvest size by late February in moderate climates or early April in harsh winters. The advantage involves continuous small harvests rather than single large cuttings. Individual leaves can be picked without damaging plants, extending productivity over months. A 10-foot row produces approximately 4 pounds of leaves when harvested this way. The flavor remains sweet since cold temperatures trigger sugar accumulation in leaves. Varieties labeled winter hardy or cold tolerant, specifically bred for December planting, outperform standard types significantly. Winter rye serves dual purposes as both soil-building cover crop and edible grain when planted in December. Seeds broadcast at 3 to 4 pounds per 1,000 square feet germinate within days, even in cold soil. The extensive root system, reaching 6 feet deep by spring, breaks up compacted soil, scavenges nutrients from deep layers, and prevents erosion during heavy winter rains. When turned under in spring, rye adds significant organic matter while suppressing weeds through allelopathic compounds in decomposing tissues. However, rye left to mature produces edible grain by early June. A 1,000 square foot patch yields approximately 40 pounds of grain containing complete protein profiles. The grain requires threshing but can be ground into flour or cooked whole like rice. This makes rye among the highest calorie crops achievable in home gardens, roughly 140,000 calories per 1,000 square feet when grown for grain. Claytonia perfoliata, also called miner's lettuce, thrives in December plantings where most greens fail. Seeds scattered across prepared beds germinate at temperatures as low as 35 Fahrenheit, forming dense mats of succulent leaves throughout winter. The plants require no care beyond occasional watering during dry spells. Individual leaves grow to silver dollar size, featuring mild, slightly tangy flavor with crisp texture. Each plant produces dozens of leaves continuously from January through April in most climates. The harvest method involves pinching off individual leaves or cutting entire rosettes at soil level. Plants resprout from remaining tissue within weeks. A 10 square foot patch yields approximately 2 pounds of leaves weekly during peak production. Commercial growers charge premium prices for Claytonia because it doesn't ship well, making home production especially valuable. The self-seeding nature means a single December planting can return for years without replanting if some plants remain to set seed in late spring. Leeks planted from seed in December develop into large transplants perfect for setting out in early spring. The extended growing period creates exceptionally thick stems with mild flavor. Seeds should be sown 1/4 inch deep in flats or protected beds spaced 1 inch apart. Seedlings tolerate multiple freeze-thaw cycles without damage once they reach pencil thickness. By March, these December-sown leeks are ready for transplanting into deep trenches where they'll mature by August. The advantage involves both size and quantity. December, started leeks produce stems up to 2 inches in diameter compared to 1-inch stems from spring sowings. Each transplant yields roughly half a pound of usable stem. A 30-foot row accommodates 60 plants, producing 30 pounds of leeks that store in cool conditions for up to 5 months. This makes leeks one of the few crops that bridges the gap between summer harvest and winter storage without requiring preservation techniques like canning or freezing. Fava beans represent the most cold-hardy bean variety available, surviving temperatures that kill all other legumes. December plantings establish deep roots before winter truly sets in, allowing plants to access moisture and nutrients unavailable to shallow-rooted crops. Seeds should be planted 3 inches deep and 6 inches apart, in blocks rather than rows. The extra depth protects against frost heaving while giving roots room to develop nitrogen-fixing nodules. Each plant produces between 20 and 40 pods containing 4 to 6 beans each. A 25 square foot block yields approximately 15 pounds of fresh beans or 5 pounds dried. The dried beans contain 26% protein and significant amounts of iron, folate, and complex carbohydrates. Professional gardeners often grow fava beans specifically for green manure, turning under the entire crop in late spring to add nitrogen for following plantings. However, the edible harvest combined with nitrogen fixation makes favas among the most productive uses of December garden space available. Specific lettuce varieties bred for cold tolerance germinate and grow through December when planted in protected locations. Varieties like Winter Density, Arctic King, and North Pole survive temperatures down to 20 degrees without protection and reach harvest size by late February. Seeds should be sown 1/4 inch deep with 2-inch spacing in rows 8 inches apart. The key involves choosing locations with maximum sun exposure and wind protection. South-facing walls or cold frames significantly extend the growing window. These varieties form tight heads rather than loose leaves, protecting inner tissues from frost damage. Each head weighs between 8 and 12 ounces at maturity. A 30 square foot bed produces approximately 40 heads when properly spaced and managed. The continuous harvest method works well. Outer leaves can be removed as needed while centers continue growing. December planting ensures heads mature during the late winter period when grocery store lettuce prices peak and quality declines significantly. Shallots planted in December produce larger bulbs with better storage characteristics than spring-planted sets. These alliums require cold exposure for proper bulb division. Insufficient cold results in single large bulbs rather than the characteristic cluster. Sets should be planted with necks just at soil level, spaced 6 inches apart in rows 12 inches wide. Each planted shallot multiplies into 8 to 12 individual bulbs by harvest time in June. The multiplication factor makes shallots exceptionally productive. 1 pound of sets produces 8 to 12 pounds of mature bulbs. Properly cured shallots store for up to 12 months in cool, dry conditions without sprouting or rotting. The flavor profile combines characteristics of garlic and onions, making them more versatile than either alone in cooking. Commercial shallots often sell for 3 to 4 times the price of onions, making home production particularly economical. December planting also means maturity occurs before thrips and other allium pests reach damaging populations, resulting in cleaner bulbs requiring less processing. December represents the final opportunity for planting these highly productive crops that will sustain gardens through winter and spring. Missing this narrow window means waiting months while productive growing space sits empty and grocery bills rise unnecessarily. The crops covered produce substantial yields relative to space invested while building soil, fixing nitrogen, and extending harvest windows significantly. Many require minimal care beyond initial planting. Nature handles most of the work during winter dormancy. The investment in seeds and sets planted now returns multiplied harvests starting in late winter and continuing through early summer. Professional growers rely on December plantings to maintain year-round production schedules that home gardeners can replicate on smaller scales. These aren't experimental or unusual crops, but proven varieties that have sustained gardeners for generations when planted during their optimal window. Taking action now ensures productive gardens regardless of what winter conditions bring in the months ahead.